Welcome to the Church of Jesus Christ. Welcome to the Tuesday Nighters. Welcome to the book club. Welcome to the suggestion box number 31. I find that extraordinary. And as I said already, this week we're studying James, the 5th chapter. I won't stay here long, but that's what you've done, and I find it extraordinary. I won't stay here long, but that's what you've done, and I find it extraordinary. I will stay here long, so we'll get started. Again, this is week 31, and our study is James 5 tonight. It's one chapter. It's 20 verses, doubling our workload from last week, though not accurately an assessment, but certainly the verses are double, but the words are not. 485 words. It was still a light, by way of reading, a light chapter, if you will. So I wanted to bring you back to James because we've been there. 10 weeks ago, we read and we discussed James, the 1st chapter, and I hope you remember it was focused on purity. Now, what I find extraordinary about James is he maintains this focus on purity. And he does it this week almost through the lens of a mirror and focuses immediately on impurity. He gives I hope you caught this as well as I did. And my introductions are my attempts to tie it together as well. So we have some continuity in reading this. Sometimes we read these chapters and maybe they feel fragmented. It's because they are, but there's also a theme if you dive in. Now, this took me a couple times to read, so maybe you had the same experience. Anyway, he maintained this focus on purity. And he did it by calling out a certain group of people. This warning that he gave from the beginning, from the first verse, is those who struggle most with purity. And it's the rich. And I didn't want that to sound judgmental. I didn't want that to sound opinionated. So I wanted also to provide a little bit of background, a little bit of evidence to what sounds like a harsh indictment of an entire class of people. So I thought I'd note what Timothy said about this. Timothy said in the first book of Timothy, in the 6th chapter, he said this: "But they that will be rich fall into temptation and a snare, and into many foolish and hurtful lusts, which drown men in destruction and perdition." And then he notes why this is. "For the love of money is the root of all evil." Now, there are people who say, and I enjoy this to take deep dives in subjects. And there are many who say that the love of money is the number one greatest addiction, and power being the second greatest addiction. And often those with money also seek the power that comes with that. So I think that's who James is looking to as he starts this chapter, finding the impurity in an entire group of people. He said that the rich oppress the poor through their wealth and through their status. James also warned that their wealth was temporary. I say warned because I think that warning was that to those who might look to them and even lust after what appears to be quote unquote success. And he warns them that it's temporary. He used words like hankered and moth-eaten and rust. He laid out these as charges against them, and even said that those crimes committed in the mindset of being the wealthy would be repaid by God's final judgment. He reminded all that a life lived in temporary luxury would be traded out, if that's how they finished this life, as God's eternal damnation is traded in. He goes on, and I hope you realize what I'm saying in the highlighted. This is James, the 5th chapter, and those are verses 7 through 11. The first comments I was making to were 1 through 6. I should have said that from the beginning. I apologize. So then James appealed to the followers of Christ, and I thought that there was again a flow to that, because because anyone can get caught up in looking to what some would deem and most would deem as success. And so he appealed to those who are following Christ to be patient and steadfast. He identified, for the many of us, that life's suffering is temporary. And he explained that almost the flip to what he said to the rich. He said that God's permanent rewards await. So if we suffer through this life, there is bliss awaiting. And he likened, I thought this was one of my favorite parts of the whole chapter, actually. He likened life to the farmer who worked and waited patiently for the harvest after the rain. And I, of course, went to the rain and through the rain that the farmer has to work through. And I just my own little note, I thought about life and what life feels like and looks like. Life involves rain. Life involves storms. Life involves troubles. But God always provides. And in this outlook, he provides umbrellas. Literal, figuratively, spiritually, in every sense of the word. Then we jump to the 13th through 18th verses, and I thought here he maintained that theme of those who suffer, at least in the eyes of one another, in the eyes of man. And this time suffering took on a whole different feel. It took on sickness. And so you may not have felt the flow from 7 through 11 to 13 through 18, but I believe he was continuing in that theme of suffering, in common, if you will, meaning for the common person, and suffering in common because all people suffer. So again, I want you to consider sickness as a part of his defining suffering, whether that's physical, mental, or spiritual, or whatever it might be. But because he goes to a certain focus on how to get through that sickness, and even ties into it more than just physical, I thought I'd mention that to you, that suffering in sickness is more than maybe what we first think. He addressed what God was offering as his salve, anointing with oil. And he said, if it should fall upon you, that you should ask the ministers to anoint you. He goes on to talk about confessing weakness, confessing sickness, if that's the weakness, confessing whatever it is to each other, and then to pray for each other, and then to support each other. And he spoke to the positivity of the anointing, that we would be healed. And he goes on to state, and I found this one of the most important and extraordinary caveats or asterisks. He says, if there's other things that person is carrying, those too will be healed in the act of the anointing. He finishes with the last of, if you will, the last of the verses 19 and 20. And I think he continued speaking to healing. Now, he may not have said healing, he may not have said anointed with oil, but I think he continues to the common sufferer, the follower of Christ, if you will, speaking on the same matter, but with a different application. Paul said it this way: all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. And as a reference, if you go back to Romans 3:23, you'll find that. But others said that as well. In James' conclusion, he addresses the fall. He addresses the falling away. He addresses the humanity in the mistakes that are made while in the flesh. And he calls whomever that might be, you, me, or anyone else, maybe even those who haven't made their commitment to the Lord, to return to God. Now, I thought in those couple verses, not just 19 and 20, but even those verses before, he was touching on so many facets of human behavior. And when I say human behavior, I mean much like Paul says, all have sinned, all have come short. all have, and then you fill in your blanks. I think there's much that we do in common, whether we're proud of it or not. It just is. Behavior number one that was called out by Paul and certainly touched upon by James: everyone sins, everyone falls, everyone is in this struggle called life. And I believe as a second behavior that, and he doesn't necessarily call this out, but it is because he tells us to confess to one another. It's easier to see and judge others who are in that struggle, and rather than finding our own faults. That takes a lot of insight. That takes a lot of self-inspection. That's a difficult thing for many people to do. So behavior three is that the fallen have to do just that. They have to self-inspect. They have to reflect and take an account of themselves and then confess this. Maybe the most difficult, to one another. I'm sick, I'm weak, I'm troubled, whatever it may be. Whatever identifies the struggle one is in. The fourth behavior, we have to accept one another. Now, whether this comes easy or not, when tested, I believe most of us come through. And I definitely believe all followers of Christ have the ability to come through if we give in to God's Spirit. But it's more than just accepting, it's accepting while they're in the struggle, while they're in the difficult times. And by accepting and embracing, it helps the others get through. And I think that's what James is telling us. We who are suffering, suffer together. And the reason why this should not come difficult for us is they, whoever they are us. We are them. And all of us are called to remember that, called to recall, if you will. Remember who you are, as it said in that great line in The Lion King. Remember who you are. And stop and pause and consider. And when we get to that place, we're able to love people back. What James was saying, that we are the key to each other's restoration. He uses that phrase, and I didn't want to do the whole quote, but he speaks to the power of a fervent prayer of just one, let alone when we all band together. So I thought James 5 was spectacular.